Now, as the title of this video would suggest, we're going to explore the entire Belmont clan from Castlevania for a good hour or so you can expect us to go into depth. Also, it doesn't matter if you've never watched any Castlevania projects or even played any of the games, you can still watch this video to learn about one of the coolest vampire hunting families of all time. Now, this is basically the clan that has given the franchise a legendary lineage of vampire hunters and frequent protagonists. Since the 11th century, they've been tasked with defeating Count Dracula and other dark entities. Their primary weapon, the sacred vampire killer whip, can destroy Dracula and any other creature of the darkness. Renowned for their exceptional combat skills, magical abilities, and use of various weapons, the Belmonts are recognized as the most powerful vampire hunting clan. In fact, they also have a number of offshoot clans, and in this video, we're going to discuss everything we've just spoken about and more. So before we get into it, please consider subscribing to us, because it's one small click from you that'll help us in marvelous ways to keep bringing you these marvelous videos. And now, without any further ado, let's get right into the entire Belmont clan explored. A brief history of the Belmont clan. The Belmont clan was not founded to eliminate creatures of the night until after the events of Castlevania, Lament of Innocence, when Leon Belmont swore to hunt the night. He had lost much to dark forces and refused to stand idle. During that same era, the Vampire Killer, the clan's super powerful weapon, which we'll talk about in a bit, was created. From that point on, defending Transylvania from evil became the family's primary mission. Leon pledged that his descendants would forever pursue the darkness and fight it. This promise started the Belmont tradition of vampire hunters, which persisted across centuries. The clan's vow set them on a dangerous path that absolutely transformed their future and legacy. Between Lament of Innocence and Dracula's Curse, the Belmonts showed incredible strength and power, but didn't sit well with everyone. You see, what happened was that their power unsettled the people of Transylvania, who came to fear them. As a result, the clan was banished from civilized society. They lived in seclusion for many years, yet their strength never wavered. In 1476, Count Dracula waged war upon humanity and unleashed terror across the land. No man or woman could oppose his forces. The church had no choice but to locate a Belmont, though they struggled to find any. Their search ended when they discovered Trevor Belmont, a young warrior worthy of the name. Trevor triumphed over Dracula. The Belmont clan's heroic deeds restored their status among the people, and in fact, the entire incident made the Belmonts get more love and respect, and they returned to live in peace. The clan continued its struggle against Dracula through many of his resurrections. Until the 19th century, they came to be considered Transylvania's shield, a group of people who repelled every threat. However, sometime after Castlevania Symphony of the Night, the Belmonts vanished. They didn't reappear until 1999 when Julius Belmont rose to defeat Dracula once and for all. In the interim, the Morris clan safeguarded the Vampire Killer. The Belmonts couldn't wield it during their absence for reasons lost to history. When Julius emerged, he reclaimed his family's birthright. Meanwhile, the inhabitants of Weigel Village descended from the Belmont line. Albus, a rogue member of Ecclesia, seized these villagers. He aimed to circumvent the lethal effects of the Dominus glyphs he had stolen. He abducted them to test a method that might protect the user of those forbidden powers. He hoped to spare his adopted sister, Shanoa, from anything untoward if she attempted to use them. Now, the Belmont clan has several members and several offshoots. While we explore them, many details will be laid out before us. Details that are equal parts fascinating and horrifying. So, let's jump in with Leon Belmont. Now, this is the founder of the entire Belmont tradition of vampire slaying, and he was the one who first wielded the Vampire Killer. He was born in 11th century Europe, where knights served their lords, preserved peace, and fought heretics in God's name. Orphaned early, he became a knight at just 16, unmatched in combat. He joined a company with his friend Matthias Cronquist, making their platoon unbeatable, but Matthias fell ill after his wife, Elisabetha, died. 1 year later, monsters invaded Leon's domain, yet the church forbade him to fight because their focus was heretics alone. Matthias then informed Leon that a vampire had kidnapped his betrothed, Sarah Trantol, and took her to the Forest of Eternal Night. Leon renounced his baronial title and entered the forest alone. This was a pretty big deal in those times. I mean, how many knights do you think would just give up their lands and titles to save their fiancée? Regardless, he found Rinaldo Gandolfi, an alchemist living there. From him, Leon learned that Walter Bernhard, a vampire who toyed with warriors, had taken Sarah. Rinaldo gave Leon a whip of alchemy and enhanced his gauntlet to absorb magical attacks. He also warned that Leon needed to defeat 5 guardians to reach Walter's quarters. Inside the castle, Leon overcame each guardian. No other knight or soldier dared to confront them alone. Joachim Armster, a vampire who rebelled against Walter, fell first. Medusa, who turned her foes to stone, was next. A succubus who posed as Sarah tried to deceive Leon. Whenever he returned to Ronaldo, Leon gleaned new information about the whip's incomplete nature, the ebony and crimson stones, and how Ronaldo lost his daughter, Justine, to vampirism. Leon then confronted Walter, but the whip failed to harm him. Sarah appeared in a strange trance, Walter fled, and Leon rushed Sarah to Ronaldo's house. She had been bitten and would soon become a vampire. The whip needed greater power to defeat Walter, so Ronaldo said it required a willing sacrifice. Sarah overheard them and offered her life. Though Leon hesitated, he fulfilled her wish, binding her soul to the whip. It became the vampire killer from that point forward. Leon buried Sarah and returned to the castle where he destroyed Walter by shattering the ebony stone. Death suddenly appeared and took Walter's soul into the crimson stone, but on the other hand, Matthias emerged with the stone to reveal his plan for vengeance against God, who took Elizabetha from him. He invited Leon to join him, but Leon refused, staying true to Sarah. Matthias vanished, leaving Death to finish Leon, but he once again triumphed and sent Death to deliver a warning. The Belmonts would destroy Matthias one day. In the end, Leon escaped before the castle collapsed and reached the outside at sunrise. Trevor C. Belmont. In 1476, the people of Wallachia grew alarmed when monsters long spoken of only in legend began to appear in villages and towns. Rumors pointed to a mysterious Count in Black called Dracula who commanded these creatures. Concerned by this threat, the Eastern Orthodox Church sent troops, suspecting Dracula might be a vampire. They also deployed a secret team to eliminate him. The Pope then turned to the Belmont family, known for their power but feared by ordinary folk. Trevor Belmont stepped up, determined to end Dracula's oppression. Needless to say, Trevor had always been on the cusp of turning points for the Belmont clan, and he was probably the Belmont with the most responsibility and pressure as someone who faced the wrath of Dracula when he first struck. We know that Trevor came from Leon Belmont's bloodline, and because of his superhuman abilities, the Belmont family lived apart from society. On his journey, Trevor gained allies. First, he defeated Grant Dynasty, a rebel fighter who had been cursed and turned into a demon at the clock tower. When Grant returned to human form, he joined up with Trevor. Next, Trevor rescued Sypha Belnades, a witch who had disguised herself as a man to avoid persecution. A Cyclops had petrified her, but Trevor freed her and gained her support. The last ally to appear was Lecarde, Dracula's son. He opposed his father's actions and challenged Trevor to test his strength. Trevor prevailed, although Lecarde held back. Lecarde then agreed to fight by Trevor's side. Together, they reached Dracula's throne room. They fought through countless creatures, but only Trevor's vampire-killing whip could land the decisive blow. He struck Dracula down, and the four heroes watched the castle collapse from a nearby cliff. The monsters vanished with Dracula's defeat, and Wallachia found peace. The people then honored the Belmonts and welcomed them into society. The land prospered for a time, yet poverty and famine soon returned. These troubles grew worse near the ruins of Dracula's castle. 3 years after Dracula's fall, Trevor sensed a dark presence but dismissed it as an ill omen. He then heard rumors of a cult of Dracula worshippers. His search led him to a deserted monastery where he encountered a man named Hector who admitted he was a devil forge master. Convinced that Hector caused Wallachia's misfortune, Trevor attacked. Hector proved weaker than expected, which surprised Trevor. He soon realized this man had once served Dracula but betrayed him. Trevor moved on and found Isaac, another devil forge master. They battled, and Isaac wounded Trevor just enough to collect his blood. Isaac fled, declaring he would kill both Trevor and Hector. Trevor gave chase and later learned Isaac sought to open a hidden chamber beneath an abandoned castle sealed by Belmont blood. Realizing Isaac's plan, Trevor tested Hector's growing strength in a duel. Hector fought well, so Trevor allowed him to pursue Isaac. Trevor broke the seal and urged Hector to show no mercy. At the heart of the Infinite Corridor, Dracula's castle rose once more. As Trevor stood in shock, Isaac stabbed him from behind. He revealed that Hector had unleashed the castle by releasing demonic energy in his fights. With Trevor gravely wounded, Isaac withdrew. A witch named Julia Laforesi found Trevor in time to save him. Though close to death, he survived because of his extraordinary endurance. He then returned to his wife and continued the Belmont bloodline, having done his part to keep Wallachia safe once again. Christopher and Soleil Belmont. Count Dracula rose again in 1576, exactly 100 years after Trevor Belmont and his allies defeated him. This was the first time the Count's 100-year resurrection cycle became clear. Christopher Belmont, motivated by his ancestral duties, set out to confront Dracula. He carried the vampire killer, the same whip Trevor once used to destroy the Dark Lord. Christopher journeyed through a graveyard, a cave, and a booby-trapped tower before arriving at Dracula's castle. He battled the Count, won, and escaped just before the fortress collapsed. From a hillside cliff, Christopher watched the castle crumble and believed Dracula to be gone for good. However, the Count survived by transforming into mist, then shifted into bat form and fled. Too weak to restore his full power, he waited patiently for a chance to attack the Belmonts again with his full might. 15 years passed and Dracula kept waiting. Castlevania 2: Belmont's Revenge began with Christopher's son, Soleil, reaching adulthood as a new vampire hunter. The people of Transylvania felt safe, certain that Christopher and Soleil would guard their land. Dracula still reeled from his defeat, but saw Soleil as a way to regain his strength. One day, after Soleil's celebration, the young Belmont disappeared, which led to the rise of 4 elemental castles from the earth. Alarmed, Christopher set out to find his son. He destroyed each castle's guardian, dispersing the evil magic that sustained them. Dracula's castle then emerged from the ground. Within its halls, Christopher found Soleil under the Count's influence. Soleil Belmont, also known as Julius Belmont, was the first Belmont who became a bad guy, so much so that he appeared as a boss in the Castlevania games. He was also the first Belmont the player ever fought. As mentioned, he's the son of Christopher Belmont, and in that capacity he holds great power and skill. Furthermore, Soleil learned vampire hunting skills from his father, but Count Dracula's influence warped him once he reached adulthood. Anyways, once Christopher and Soleil came face to face, they realized they were fighting on opposite sides. Father and son clashed, and Christopher prevailed, releasing Soleil from Dracula's control. Soleil revealed that Dracula intended to use the 4 elemental spirits to become whole again. Christopher pressed on for a final confrontation with Drac himself. He once again vanquished the Dark Lord, and father and son watched the castle crumble, convinced they had ended Dracula's threat. They believed the Belmont line would stand strong against future evils. This battle became Christopher's most painful test, as he fought not only to defeat Dracula, but also to save his own son. Personality-wise, Christopher appears more reluctant than the other Belmonts. He suffers nightmares of Dracula's return and dreads facing horrors like those Trevor endured. He longs for peace with his new wife and hopes to never confront such evil again. When a dark cult resurrects Dracula and defiles the graves of Christopher's parents, he accepts that his time has come. He overcomes his fears, fulfills his role as a Belmont, and resolves to pass the vampire killer whip on to future generations. Through these trials, he embraces his family's destiny and stands ready to defend humanity from the looming shadow of Count Dracula. Simon Belmont. Simon Belmont was born around 1669 into the Belmont clan. Of course, he inherited the vampire killer as a family heirloom. From a young age, he listened to tales of his heroic ancestors such as Trevor and Christopher Belmont, who had once vanquished the Count Dracula. While training to wield the whip, Simon wondered if he could ever measure up to those legends. At age 22, in the year 1691, he received his chance. A Dark Order reawakened Count Dracula on Easter Day, exactly 100 years after Christopher Belmont last defeated him. Simon set foot inside Dracula's castle alone, determined to prevent another reign of terror. He triumphed against Dracula's servants and finally challenged the Count himself. During that battle, Dracula inflicted a wound on Simon's back and secretly placed a deadly curse upon him. For 7 years, the curse slowly ate away at Simon's body. He believed he faced death. One night, while visiting his family's cemetery, a mysterious woman appeared. She revealed that he must collect Dracula's remains, heart, nail, rib bone, eyeball, ring, and burn them in the ruins of Dracula's castle. He then vanished just as swiftly as she came. Simon gathered his resolve and began this new quest, following which he ventured into the land once again haunted by monsters. Many villagers boarded up their homes at dusk. Some offered assistance and supplies in exchange for gold. Others, fearful that collecting Dracula's remains would hasten the vampire's return, refused to help or provided misleading hints. Undeterred, Simon found each of Dracula's remains inside guarded mansions. He traveled back to the castle's ruins and placed them there. Dracula's servants also hid a 6th piece, the Fang, which did trigger Dracula's revival. Simon fought him again, this time burning the remains and shattering the curse. He then buried the final remnants of Dracula in a graveyard, and his bravery etched his name among history's greatest heroes. The Belmont family gained the villagers' admiration, ending the scorn that had long followed them. A small settlement rose around the Belmonts, where Juste Belmont would someday live with his friends Maxim Kashin and Liddy Erlinger. In his early appearances, Simon's personality remained unclear due to the limitations of 8-bit storytelling. Later accounts revealed a brash and headstrong warrior. Unlike Leon, Trevor, and Christopher Belmont, Simon relied on pure physical abilities. By his own admission, he lacked deep knowledge of magic and preferred hard-earned strength instead. This surprised future hunters like Jonathan Morris, who feared Simon's unyielding approach to training. Simon often acted before gathering all the facts. When he first encountered Genya Arikado in Grimoire of Souls, he presumed him to be an enemy because the vampire killer responded to Arikado's presence. He attacked it once, then apologized upon learning that Arikado was actually Lecarde. His rash nature gradually shifted after he survived Dracula's curse. During his second quest, he lost much of his physical power and relied on strategy and caution. This trial secured his place as one of the mightiest Belmonts and ensured his legacy as a fearless protector of mankind. Juste Belmont. After Simon's fierce struggle against Count Dracula, the Belmont family regained favor with the residents. Simon became a lifesaver in their eyes, and they viewed him as a hero. People gathered around him, and a small village formed near the Belmonts. Juste Belmont grew up in this community with two dear friends, Maxim Kashin and Liddy Erlinger. Once a century, when Dracula rises from his tomb, his power calls forth all manner of monsters to serve him. The Belmonts must hone their skills and stand ready for this eventual battle. Juste also received a specific responsibility to seek out Dracula's body parts, a task that demanded both courage and vigilance. 2 years passed before Maxim reappeared from a grueling training expedition. He was wounded and confused, and he spoke of Liddy's abduction. Despite his injuries, he guided Juste through thick fog to a mysterious castle not marked on any map. Unable to press on, Maxim stayed behind to recover. Juste ventured inside, forced onward by a giant undead knight, armed only with the vampire killer whip and a special bracelet he shared with Maxim. Within the castle, Juste uncovered the truth of Maxim's expedition. Maxim had gathered Dracula's remains in an attempt to surpass Juste's strength. This decision turned disastrous when the remains' dark influence seized control of Maxim's spirit. A second personality, dark and malevolent, split from his mind. This evil side kidnapped Liddy, wiped Maxim's memory, and lured Juste to the castle. The building itself was split into 2 versions linked by portals, each reflecting a side of Maxim's divided consciousness. The multiple endings that followed depended on both the player's choices as well as whether Juste wore his own bracelet as well as Maxim's at the final moment. Maxim's fate rested on these key details. A different version of Juste appears in the Netflix series Castlevania Nocturne. Instead of a youthful warrior, he's an aging recluse who lives away from society. Unlike the original storyline, where his familial link to Richter Belmont remained unclear, this adaptation establishes him as Richter's estranged grandfather. Though parts of his backstory echo the original tale, there are major changes. He did marry a woman named Liddy, and he had a friend named Maxim. Both died at the hands of the vampire Lord Ruthven. That tragedy broke Juste's will to fight, and his magical gifts deserted him soon afterward. Juste appears more reserved and introverted, and he shares no strong bonds beyond Maxim and Liddy. He loves both friends deeply and wishes to shield them from harm. Even when Maxim succumbed to Dracula's evil, Juste's faith in him never faltered, and that trust helped Maxim reclaim control. Juste also indulged his quieter interests by collecting furniture in one corner of the castle, displaying a light-hearted side. Richter Belmont. Richter Belmont was the youngest heir of the Belmont clan in his era. When Count Dracula rose anew through the Dark Priest Shaft, who sacrificed a young woman's blood to bring the vampire back to life, Richter's life changed forever. Dracula's servants invaded Algiba and abducted Richter's beloved Annette, as well as Maria Renard, Tara, Iris, and many other villagers. On the road to the village, Death tested Richter's resolve with a barrage of attacks. Richter prevailed, and Death vanished, promising that their next meeting would be less courteous. With the help of Maria, Richter journeyed through hordes of monsters, saved the captives, and defeated Dracula. That victory left him convinced he had fulfilled his vampire-hunting destiny. 4 years later, Shaft's spirit persisted in an invisible crystal ball. He manipulated Richter into becoming the new master of Dracula's castle. Shaft exploited a hidden emptiness within Richter, who felt incomplete after Dracula's defeat. He believed that a Belmont's purpose shone only when fighting the Dark Lord, so he allowed Shaft to control him in a misguided desire for eternal battle. Alucard awakened from his slumber to investigate the castle's reappearance. Maria assisted him in freeing Richter by revealing Shaft's hold over it. Alucard shattered the crystal ball, breaking Shaft's control. He then advanced to confront Dracula once more while Richter and Maria waited outside. Shamed by his enslavement, Richter abandoned his role as a vampire hunter. Even so, he took up the vampire killer again to aid Maria and Alucard when new threats emerged. In a letter to Maria, he warned her of vampire attacks on the village where she and Alucard stayed. He urged her to be cautious. Richter soon tracked the vampire responsible for these attacks. He rescued two inexperienced hunters, Cyril and Alexis, from a skeleton and made his name known. Later, he saved Maria from a harmful potion and tells Alucard that those closest to him would be endangered if he gave in to his vampiric nature. Richter then joined forces with Cyril to rescue Alexis from Magnus, a black-winged demon, and they faced the creature together alongside Alucard. Richter admitted his failure to resist Shaft's influence in another chapter of his story. He handed the vampire killer to the Morris family and chose a life of seclusion, hoping future Belmonts would never feel his haunting desire for endless combat. During Castlevania, Portrait of Ruin, Jonathan Morris could enter a trial to awaken the whip's true strength by battling a living memory of Richter. In that fight, Richter unleashed his sub-weapons: daggers, crosses, holy water, axes, the Grand Cross, along with a swift dash and the vampire killer's highest potential. Once defeated, his memory granted Jonathan the whip's full power. Richter showed a fiery sense of justice and an unbreakable will. He was kind to those he saved, yet reckless enough to charge headlong into danger. Annette sometimes criticized his rash behavior, although he also displayed caution by initially refusing Maria's aid. Despite his good nature, he struggled with emptiness after his victory over Dracula. Shaft took advantage of this, using Richter's dormant wish for unending battle. Michael R. Belmont. Michael R. Belmont was an old man who gave Eric Lecarde the dragon-crested key to the Lecarde family temple. This temple held the Alucard spear. Through that gift, Michael informed Eric of Elizabeth Bartley's plan to revive Count Dracula. He urged him to accept his destiny as a vampire hunter. Because of his advanced age, Michael likely descended from Richter Belmont in the EGM Fax family tree, though he could have been from Soleil's line. The European Castlevania Bloodlines manual calls him a mysterious old man, but he doesn't even appear in the US manual. The R in his name may come from Richter. Some fans suggest that Reinhard Schneider was once planned as Michael's son before the decision to make Reinhardt an offshoot from the Belmont line. Michael's role might conflict with events in Castlevania Judgment, but shows Eric using the Alucard spear at a younger age. The fact states that Eric first used the spear at 23, which implies a later timeline. Despite these differences, the story could still work if we consider Eric an expert spear user without the Alucard spear when he first met Michael. This preserves Michael's significance in guiding Eric's mission, and his legacy endures among the Belmonts. Julius Belmont. Julius Belmont was a learned, stern Belmont who rarely wasted words. He remained quiet and thoughtful despite his formidable power. Even when his memory failed, he showed humility. When Soma Cruz met him in Dracula's castle, Julius merely shrugged at the young man's confusion over how he had arrived there, reflecting his calm acceptance of danger. He was the first Belmont in 2 centuries to defeat Dracula, fighting in the largest recorded conflict with the Dark Lord. That duty shaped his serious, no-nonsense personality. He refused distractions or theatrics, especially when demons lurked. He warned Soma, whom he considered a friend, that if the boy became Dracula, he would destroy him without mercy. He carried only essential sub-weapons, never wasting time with frivolous tools. Even in a life-or-death struggle, he stayed focused on the mission. During their fierce duel in 2035, Julius still held back. After Soma prevailed, he realized Julius had not displayed his full strength. Julius later affirmed this, sensing Soma's goodness beneath Dracula's power. He lent his support in Soma's final battle against Chaos, revealing his benevolent core. In Castlevania, Aria of Sorrow, Julius suffered amnesia caused by his cataclysmic victory over Dracula in 1999. He wandered the castle, drawn by an unspoken intuition. Through gradual revelations, he remembered sealing Dracula's castle in the eclipse. He also recognized that Graham Jones was not the real threat. Soma was the true carrier of Dracula's soul. Julius retrieved the vampire killer, prepared to act if Soma fell to darkness. His suspicion proved correct, and the two fought. Julius lost, although he admitted he had restrained himself, convinced Soma could resist Dracula's influence. Should Soma fail to defeat Chaos in the game's non-canonical ending, Julius arrives to fulfill his promise and end Dracula's reign once more. Canonically, however, Soma prevails, and Julius regains his identity. Unlike other bosses, Julius grants no soul upon defeat, underscoring his unique role. Players can choose Julius mode in Aria of Sorrow to experience his classic Belmont abilities. He leaps high with an uppercut, cannot absorb souls or wield new weapons, and improves his stats only by collecting boss orbs. These restrictions raise the difficulty but highlight his pure hunting style. In Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, Julius, Genya Ericado, and Yoko Belnades investigate Celia Fortner's efforts to resurrect the Dark Lord. Julius first appears at the Lost Village, advising Soma to keep his distance. When Soma refuses, Julius respects his resolve and continues on. In the Condemned Tower, he contemplates a barrier he can destroy at a great cost to his powers. Later, he confronts Dario Bossi but fails to stop him, lacking the magic seal needed to halt Dario's regenerative abilities. Soma intervenes and Dario flees, revealing his final battleground in the Pinnacle. In time, Julius reunites with Arikado at the same barrier. Despite his reluctance, he unleashes his full power to break it, leaving him drained. He then trusts Soma to pursue Celia alone. After Menace falls, Julius stands with the others, relieved to see Soma uncorrupted. Behind his stern exterior, he harbors hope for a future without Dracula. His determination and sense of duty set him apart, defining him as one of the most solemn, yet loyal Belmonts history. Sid Belmont! Sid Belmont is one of the more obscure members of the clan. He starred in the 1990 choose-your-own-adventure novel The Legend of Satanic Castle, The Vampire Hunters. He shares a timeline with Zoe, Dolores, and Desmond, holding his own amongst them. Like Trevor, Sid boasts remarkable strength and speed. He also brandishes the Vampire Killer, a symbol of Belmont might. Because each resurrection of Dracula grows in power, Sid confronted a fiercer foe than Trevor. Though overshadowed by modern Belmonts, he remains a formidable hunter. His legend endures as an unsung hero who rose against the rising darkness. Zoe, Dolores, and Desmond Belmont. During the late 1600s, a dark faction calling itself the Order worked to resurrect Count Dracula in exchange for greater power and eternal life. At the same time, Desmond Belmont and his sisters, Zoe and Dolores, sensed a connection between the Order and Dracula. They followed leads to a mansion by the Eternal Night Forest where the Order was rumored to meet. Desmond launched a frontal assault while Zoe and Dolores looked for clues on separate paths. Desmond found Zoe again within the mansion. She gave him an alchemic gauntlet and suggested his next move. He crossed a cavern complex and all three siblings regrouped at the entrance of the sanctum. Zoe and Dolores returned inside for more clues, leaving Desmond to press on. Inside the sacrificial chamber, Desmond encountered Rohan Kraus, leader of the Order and suspected murderer of his parents. They clashed in a fierce battle and Desmond triumphed, claiming the legendary vampire killer whip. Rohan's sacrifice fueled Dracula's resurrection, and with his dying words, he mocked Desmond to see the truth at Castlevania. Desmond reached the castle's keep and confronted a newly reborn Count Dracula. They exchanged words before engaging in a final duel. Desmond prevailed once more and left Dracula defeated on the ground. The siblings then departed the castle hoping to return to normal life, yet Desmond felt a lingering unease. Days later, he returned alone, expecting ruins, but found the castle still standing, unchanged by its master's fall. Desmond's character design blended traits from Simon and Richter with newer elements added. Over time, his concept shifted, giving him a distinct persona while retaining some family resemblance. Fans who wished for a younger protagonist found their vision in his youthful look and fighting style. Despite his success, Desmond sensed evil ahead, drawing him further. Simon Belmont. Simon Belmont is the descendant of the famous hero with the same name who defeated Dracula in the 1500s and later rescued Mina in the 1950s. He's chosen to portray his ancestor in The Devil Castle Dracula, a film celebrating the original Simon's exploits. Lucy Lane, his co-star, will play Mina. During filming, the crew stumbles upon Dracula's tomb and unknowingly breaks the seal that once imprisoned the Dark Lord. Now, Simon must accept the daunting duty his ancestor once faced. He draws on the Belmont legacy to confront Dracula once again and save everyone from impending darkness. As events unfold, he realizes his fate mirrors the original hero's, forcing him to prove his worth. Although he is an official Castlevania character, this Simon Belmont is an alternate iteration outside Konami's primary timeline. So, with that, that's every Belmont worth talking about. So let's jump into the offshoots of the Belmont clan, starting with the Lecarde Clan. The Lecarde Clan is related to the Belmont clan. They received the Lecarde spear at the same time the Morris clan obtained the vampire kill. They also hold the ability to open the path to the realm where Whip's memory appears for the Morris lineage. Eric Lecarde grew unhappy with the idea that the Lecarde spear served only as support for the vampire kill. At age 15, he wandered outside his home and found himself in a strange dimension. There, he met Aeon, a time guardian who tested him in combat to confirm his worth as a champion. Eric fought opponents who included Lecarde, Trevor Belmont, and Maria Renard. He demonstrated the spear's power, holding his own against fighters thought to surpass him. Systematic victories over these foes gave him confidence that both his spear and his skill could rival Dracula himself. In early adulthood, Eric decided to forsake his hunter's path. He discovered a passion for sculpting and argued often with his father. At 18, he left home to pursue his craft, leaving his fiancée behind. 5 years later, he worked on the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. During a thunderstorm, an old man visited him and warned him of Elizabeth Bartley's resurrection. She was Dracula's niece, awakened from a 300-year slumber, intent on bringing her uncle back. The stranger handed Eric a key, urging him to return home and accept his destiny. That man was Michael R. Belmont, though Eric didn't know his identity at the time. Eric spent several days in conflict before he decided to go back. On arrival, he faced tragedy. Elizabeth had drained his fiancée, Lucy Seward, of her blood 10 days prior. Lucy lay in bed, mortally weak, and told Eric that her soul was trapped in Dracula's castle near Bisiritz, Romania. She asked him to save her, then died. Her body was buried with a stake in her heart and her head severed, reflecting the rituals used to prevent vampiric resurrection. Anger consumed Eric, and at that moment, the old man's key shone brightly. It led him to a marble temple in his garden. Inside, he saw the Lecarde spear chained and glowing. When he touched it, the chain loosened and a shock surged through him. He understood then that he was fated to be a vampire hunter. By 1917, Elizabeth Bartley planned to harness the carnage of World War I. Dracula's hateful spirit lingered, seeking a new body. Elizabeth intended to sacrifice millions of lives to reunite him with his physical form at Castle Proserpina above Whitby, England. Eric traveled to Bisiritz, where he met John Morris. John descended from the Morris branch of the Belmont clan. Eric performed a ceremony that helped John channel the vampire killer's true power. The pair followed Elizabeth and her sorceress ally, Drolta Suzentes, across Europe. Eventually, they reached Castle Proserpina. Their combined might foiled Elizabeth's ritual. Dracula's soul faded back into the shadows, unable to regain true form. Eric later found new love and fathered twin daughters, Stella and Loretta, born in 1923. Stella inherited her father's physical gifts and Loretta inherited his magical aptitude. Though neither claimed the Lecarde spear, both learned the Lecarde's family traditions, including the special right to awaken the vampire killer's full power if handled by someone outside the pure Belmont line. Eric doted on them, but also taught them to defend themselves. He knew that darkness would return eventually. Stella and Loretta Lecarde grew up aware of their heritage. Years later, Eric vanished inside Dracula's castle after its reappearance. The sisters sought him and found him unconscious before Bronner, a vampire who turned both of them into his minions. Bronner cast a spell that convinced Stella and Loretta that he was their true father. The sisters confronted Jonathan Morris and Charlotte Allen. Stella first appeared in the Sandy Grave region with Loretta and Bronner. She taunted the hunters and challenged them, fueled by Bronner's deception. When Stella fought Jonathan a second time, she lost and regained a glimmer of her former self. Jonathan tried to finish her off, but Loretta intervened, rescuing her sister. Stella dropped a locket showing Eric, Loretta, and herself. Jonathan and Charlotte showed the locket to Wind, who revealed his true name, Eric Lecarde, and explained that the sisters were his daughters, not Bronner's. This revelation opened the way to cure them. Jonathan and Charlotte faced Stella and Loretta in the Master's Keep. If they simply overpowered them, Bronner spirited the girls away, leaving Eric's spirit to lament their fate. The castle crumbled and the hunters met a grim end. However, in the proper outcome, Jonathan used the Sanctuary spell to cure Stella and Loretta, freeing them from Bronner's hold. They repaid Jonathan by offering to conduct a ritual that allowed him to unlock the vampire killer's full strength. Jonathan then battled the Whip's memory alone, succeeding where his father once struggled. After Dracula's defeat, the sisters reunited with Eric's spirit. Stella showed sorrow over their father's final passing, grieving the pain they had caused. Another member of the clan, Hermina Lecarde, lived far removed from that era. She served as chief researcher for Elgos, a group that guarded Dracula's possessions and the grimoires that contained records of heroes who had fought him. She devised a method to step into these grimoires. One day, she destroyed her research and vanished, taking several books that included a dark version of Soma Cruz's story. Seward, Elgos's leader, believed Hermina had turned traitor, but she had realized that Death himself orchestrated the group's creation to help resurrect Dracula. She stole the hero grimoires to thwart this plan. In time, Hermina appeared in the grimoire realm, allied with an evil Soma Cruz known as Dark King Soma. She later attacked the Elgos building to seize vital souls. Her intention was to stop Dracula's return by any means, including drastic measures that placed her in direct opposition to Death. In the final confrontation at the castle's keep, Hermina tried to slay an awakened Dracula but was knocked aside. Dark Soma revealed her complicity in gathering the vital souls for his own ascension. He consumed the last soul, despite Death's attempt to interfere, and fled with Hermina left unconscious. The heroes brought her back to the real world for questioning. Hermina had risked everything, determined to halt the Count's resurrection, although her methods placed her at odds with Alucard's group. Her cunning and bold action continued the Lecarde tradition of standing against Dracula's resurrection, whether it was in direct battle or by subverting the very conspiracies meant to free him. Helsing Clan. The only prominent member of the Helsing Clan of the Castlevania universe is Abraham Van Helsing himself. He arrives in England to uncover the cause of Lucy Westenra's mysterious illness. He discovers vampirism at work and leads a band of men to track down Count Dracula, the source of Lucy's torment. Many later adaptations present Van Helsing as a seasoned mentor who knows the undead's secrets, yet lacks the physical prowess to fight them on his own. Konami's internal documents for Castlevania Bloodlines propose that Van Helsing descends from Trevor Belmont and Sypha Belnades. This detail places him within the greater Belmont narrative, linking his family to the legendary vampire hunters. In that same material, Helsing is presented as the family name, while Van appears to be the character's given name. The series suggests an overlap of lore between Stoker's creation and the Belmont saga, although it diverges in certain historical points. Charlie Vincent, an elderly vampire hunter in Castlevania, shares many traits with Van Helsing. He has knowledge about dark forces and ways to confront them, yet lacks the strength of a younger fighter, echoing Van Helsing's advisory role. The animated series also includes a reference to the Doctor with a mention of his research in a mysterious volume given to Hector by Lenore. Morris Clan. The Morris clan inherited the vampire killer whip after Alucard defeated his father, Count Dracula, in 1797. At that moment, the Belmont clan mysteriously withdrew from the stage of history, and the Morris family took on the sacred duty of guarding the whip. In 1897, Quincy Morris engaged Dracula in a fateful struggle from which the Count emerged vanquished once more. Quincy himself suffered mortal wounds, though, and his triumph would cost him his life. That confrontation ensured Dracula's banishment, but it also set events into motion for the next generation. By 1917, Dracula's niece, Elizabeth Bartley, raised her uncle once again, intent on plunging the world into darkness. John Morris, Quincy's son, joined forces with Eric Lecarde to put an end to Bartley's plan. They succeeded, but the whip claimed a steep toll from John. Because he was not a pure Belmont, each use of the vampire killer's full might drained his life. After the battle, his health declined, leading to his untimely death. Later, John's son, Jonathan, took up the whip. He managed to awaken its complete power without forfeiting his life force. By the time of the Demon Castle War in 1999, the Belmonts presumably reclaimed the weapon. The Morris line faded from the public record, leaving few clues about their ultimate fate. Quincy Morris was not a wholly original creation for Castlevania. He drew inspiration from Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula, where a Texan named Quincy Morris aided Van Helsing's group. Quincy ended the vampire's menace but died from severe wounds inflicted by the Count's servants. Castlevania adapted that account to its timeline. Though the crucial elements remained, certain details changed to align with the series' lore. The Japanese source material for Castlevania Bloodlines suggested Quincy had wielded the vampire killer himself in 1897. He likely discovered the whip's side effect for non-Belmont users, though the story never made that explicit. It might explain why he didn't live long after his battle with Dracula. The English localization, however, told a different version. That version stated Quincy finished Dracula with a wooden stake and died from the injuries he received. John Morris and Eric Lecarde witnessed the confrontation from the shadows, sparking their resolve to carry on his legacy. In the novel, Quincy Morris stabbed Dracula through his heart with a Bowie knife, whereas Castlevania's Japanese script hinted that Quincy might have used the vampire killer instead. The English release settled on a stake, underscoring a direct link with the classic lore of vampire hunting. Some early notes by Bram Stoker placed Dracula's defeat around 1893, while the published novel used no definitive date. Castlevania aligned it with 1897, the same year that the novel came out. Another difference lay in Dracula's motivation. Stoker's original Count yearned to wage war on humanity to rule them, while Castlevania's Dark Lord sought to annihilate humankind. These changes showed the Castlevania series only borrowed the novel's core elements, molding them to its own timeline. Quincy's existence as a Belmont relative also broke with the source material, where Quincy had no known Belmont ties. In Castlevania, he had a son, John, which again deviated from the original novel. John Morris was born in Texas. His family descended from the Belmont line, although they had operated in England until economic hardship drove them to seek wealth in America. The Morris family struck gold, prospered in Texas, and rose to prominence. When John was 2 years old, Quincy traveled to England. There, he battled Dracula and lost his life, ending the Count's threat, but orphaning his son. John grew up under tutors and had an older Native American magician named Morgan who introduced him to the ways of magic. When he turned 18, John learned his family's history and tested his compatibility with the vampire killer. Upon grasping the whip, he saw a red aura that entered his body, signifying his ability to access its power. From that day forward, he fought vampires with remarkable success, aided by Morgan's magical teachings and the whip's lethal force. Elizabeth Bartley, Dracula's niece, awakened in 1914. She enlisted Drolta Tuentes, a sorceress, to assist in reviving Dracula. His hateful spirit had roamed the earth after Quincy reduced him to ash searching for a body. Elizabeth took advantage of World War I's horrors, planning to harness countless souls to resurrect Dracula. She aimed to reach Castle Proserpina above Whitby, England, where Dracula's spirit waited. John and Eric Lecarde tracked her across Europe. John visited his father's grave in Bizaritz, where the threat of undead creatures grew. He then journeyed to the remains of Castle Dracula, fought monstrous guardians, and pursued Elizabeth to Castle Proserpina. With Eric's help, John thwarted Bartley's designs and prevented Dracula's return. The dark spirit fled Europe, scattering before the combined might of the Morris-Lecarde duo. After this struggle, John realized the whip had drained his life. A non-Belmont's use of the vampire killer's full strength required a forfeit of vitality each time it unleashed its hidden potential. By then, John had already overused that forbidden power. His health deteriorated, leaving him feeble. Around 1926, he fathered Jonathan. To spare his son from the whip's deadly price, John refused to teach him how to wield it. He offered only the most basic instructions in fighting. He then passed away. Jonathan resented his father for withholding secrets, unaware that John had tried to spare him a terrible fate. Decades later, Eric Lecarde explained the truth to Jonathan when Dracula resurfaced in 1944. Jonathan, as a descendant of the Morris line, tapped into the whip's might without suffering the same toil. He may have been the final Morris to own it, though he likely passed it on to Julius Belmont before the Demon Castle War in 1999. Jonathan Morris served as a hero in Castlevania Portrait of Ruin. He joined Charlotte Allen, a descendant of the Fernandez or Belnades line, to confront Bronner, a vampire artist, and his adoptive daughters, Stella and Loretta, who threatened humanity during World War II. Jonathan lacked the whip's full power at first since he wasn't a pure Belmont. Gradually, through trials and revelations, he unlocked its potential. He made peace with his father's choice once he learned why John never told him how to wield the vampire killer's strength. Jonathan's victory over Bronner was proof that the Morris bloodline could match the Belmont legacy, even if they lacked pure Belmont heritage. He maintained a strong bond with Charlotte, though they described their friendship as platonic. Jonathan later resurfaced as a memory within the Grimoire of Souls. These grimoires housed echoes of past events and served as battlegrounds for malevolent attempts to rewrite Castlevania's history. Within one grimoire set in 1944 Transylvania, Jonathan encountered an empowered Dullahan that threatened to overwhelm him. A group led by Genya Arikado, under his true persona of Alucard within the grimoire, and a younger Maria Renard joined forces with Shanoa and a memory of Simon Belmont to rescue him. After sealing the Dullahan's vital soul, Jonathan expressed lingering frustration over the harsh life he and his father endured because the Belmonts had disappeared, leaving the Morris clan to carry the whip's burden. He emphasized that he held no ill will towards Simon, who came from an earlier era. Jonathan jested about training with Maria to stay in shape, only for Simon to volunteer as his sparring partner. Jonathan recoiled at that idea since Simon's punishing workouts surpassed the standards of 1940s vampire hunters. The Morris clan faded from the spotlight by the time Julius Belmont reclaimed the vampire killer for the 1999 war against Dracula. Their ultimate destiny remains a mystery, and their final records end with Jonathan's crowning moments in 1944 and his cameo in the grimoires. Their chapter in Castlevania lore stands as testament to the Belmonts' far-reaching influence. Though they weren't pure-blooded members of the legendary lineage, they proved they could still stand firm against the Prince of Darkness. John's sacrifice, Quincy's heroic stand, and Jonathan's growth all underscore the enormous weight that came with wielding the whip. Whether they continued as a family of hunters or faded into obscurity, their story merged with the Belmont tradition, ensuring that the vampire killer remained a symbol of hope against the ongoing threat of Dracula. Their achievements survived as an integral part of the legend, bridging the centuries between the Belmonts' disappearance and their triumphant return. Ericson Clan. The Ericson Clan, sometimes referred to as the Ericson family, was among the many offshoots of the Belmont line. Their origin traces back to the 16th century when Leif Ericson married Amanda Belmont, daughter of Christopher Belmont. This union blended Nordic heritage with the sacred power of the Belmonts, and the family's bloodline carried on to the early 20th century. One of their last known hunters was Bolt Ericson, who reportedly fought alongside John Morris, Eric Lecarde, and Yoko Felnades in 1917. Together, they traveled across Europe to stop Elizabeth Bartley from reviving Count Dracula. According to the Bloodlines facts disclosed by Electronic Gaming Monthly, the Ericson clan held a hammer as their signature weapon, passed down much like the vampire killer or the Alucard spear. Bolt's personal hammer leveled up in the stages, starting from a wooden hammer, then moving on to iron and eventually evolving into a shockwave variant. It allowed him to strike horizontally, perform vertical blows, and smash through ceilings with ease. This design bore similarities to a barbarian adversary in Castlevania Bloodlines, suggesting that Bolt's model may have been adapted to create that enemy after he was cut from the final product. Some sources hint that Bolt's hammer may have been Mjolnir, the legendary implement of the Norse god Thor, lending him a barbarian-like flair. There are parallels between this rumored weapon and the Morgenstern seen in Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, which can actually evolve into Mjolnir. Although the Ericson clan appears nowhere in official canon, these early concepts indicate that Bolt was planned as a playable character in Bloodlines, only to be removed late in development. He remains a curiosity in the Castlevania lore, symbolizing a path that the developers once considered. Today, fans remember him as the powerful hammer-wielding hunter from a Nordic branch of Belmont descendants whose design and potential role linger in the shadows of an alternate Castlevania history. And with that, we've arrived at the last leg of our video, so let's find out exactly what makes the Belmont clan so powerful. Belmonts possess unusual abilities beyond typical human limits. These powers include supernatural strength, acute senses, and potent magic. Some Belmonts, like Trevor's descendants who share Sypha Belnati's lineage, develop deeper magical talents. Juste Belmont exemplifies this by channeling magic through his spellbooks, boosting his sub-weapons with arcane energy. Julius also reveals he can wield magic, although the nature of his power remains unclear. Leon Belmont, the earliest known forefather of these hunters, already displayed an aptitude for sensing vampirism. When he first faced Joachim Armster, he recognized the vampire's dark essence. Leon could also fuse sub-weapons with elemental orbs, hinting at an inherited predisposition for magic throughout his bloodline. This likely paved the way for the Belmonts' item crash abilities and their capacity to detect and combat vampires or any force of darkness. Dialogues and official lore highlight the Belmonts' extraordinary physical strength. They match vampires in raw might and surpass human standards of strength. The Anniversary Collection's ebook confirms that their potent bloodline grants them fearsome combat skill, which is why they have been both feared and revered across the centuries. In Dracula's Curse, the prologue hints at this power, illustrating how townspeople once viewed them with suspicion. Soma Cruz, after fighting Julius, admits that Julius held back, yet still unleashed enough force to shock him. Soma remarks that the vampire hunter's strength exceeds what he witnessed. Julius proves this when he uses the Grand Cross in Aria of Sorrow, causing part of the castle to shake. This feat confirms the Belmonts' remarkable potential, especially when harnessed against evil. Recent entries in the series show these abilities more vividly. In Castlevania Judgment, Simon Belmont proclaims, "That is the power of a Belmont," after unleashing his flurry of 99 rapid whip strikes. Trevor is also seen delivering supercharged punches and launching foes through the air, moving with startling speed. He celebrates these gifts, recalling how people once feared him, as did the night creatures. In Curse of Darkness, Trevor appears to be able to tap Leon's mystical heritage. He dashes forward in a blaze of fire and performs advanced skills like Blade Serpent and Grand Cross, combining speed and raw power to overwhelm adversaries. Richter Belmont is also pretty cool and has superior martial skills in Portrait of Ruin and Harmony of Despair. In Symphony of the Night, Alucard calls him the ultimate vampire hunter, unstoppable in direct conflict. Shaft capitalizes on Richter's potential by enthralling him and naming him the castle's temporary master, knowing how dangerous he would be in a fair fight. Belmonts also manifest holy-based energy. This is most evident in the Grand Cross technique, where their power flares with sacred force. In Curse of Darkness, Trevor invokes holy power when using his Grand Cross, signifying his alignment with pure magic. The clan's blood holds the key to piercing dark realms and negating evil barriers. When Isaac needs to open the path to the Infinite Corridor, he attacks Trevor to harvest a blood sample. The corridor demands Belmont blood for entry. This thread continues in Dawn of Sorrow, where Julius alone can dissolve an energy barrier within Celia's castle. His holy strength clears the way to the Mine of Judgment, where death lurks. Albus, in Order of Ecclesia, likewise seeks Belmont blood to fight Dominus, though he fails because those he tracks lack a pure connection to the main line. The Belmont's signature weapon is the Vampire Killer. It's one of the most powerful holy weapons in existence, designed to decimate unholy creatures and proves lethal against Dracula. Each generation inherits it as a sacred relic. Its full strength only emerges for a Belmont of pure blood, reflecting the original blood pact Leon forged when he created the whip in Lament of Innocence. This pact forges a spiritual bond between Belmont and Vampire Killer, letting them sense the whip's wrath, detect vampires, and even leave behind a spiritual echo of themselves within the weapon. When wielded by an outsider or a distant relative, the whip drains life in exchange for releasing its higher potential. Sub-weapons also strengthen the Belmont arsenal, including knives, axes, crosses, and holy water. Often, they amplify these with powerful crashes that channel their mystical heritage. Even beyond the whip and sub-weapons, Belmonts excel in close combat, whether through martial arts or enhanced physical feats. Their capacity to handle monstrous threats stems from natural gifts rooted in Leon's lineage and refined through each generation's training in battles. They stand as the mightiest mortal lineage in Castlevania's lore, shaped by centuries of defending humanity against Dracula's dominion. Thanks to their holy resilience, the Belmonts resist dark corruption and push back the undead's influence wherever it rises. This holy nature explains how they can seal evil realms, like Castlevania itself, or sever the source of Dracula's power. No other family demonstrates the synergy of physical might, arcane skill, and unwavering determination. Though other hunters challenge the night, the Belmonts remain unmatched because of their blood inheritance and their steadfast resolve. They draw on centuries of triumphs over the Prince of Darkness, forging a legacy feared by evil and revered by those who witness their unyielding will. You know what? Since we have explored everything in such detail, we're just going to go ahead and briefly explain one more thing. And that's the citizens of Wygall Village, who are considered to be Belmonts. So, Wygall Village from Castlevania Order of Ecclesia is one of the only safe havens aside from Ecclesia. It has no enemies, yet it still holds side missions from its rescued inhabitants. Shanoa frees villagers imprisoned by torpor glyphs. Each person she saves offers distinct requests reflecting unique trades or personalities. These tasks provide rewards and improved gear. If all 13 villagers are rescued before Shanoa enters the Mystery Manor, she can reach Dracula's castle and secure the game's good ending. Nikolai, often dubbed Father by everyone, founded Wygall. He cares deeply for each resident's joy. He gives Shanoa no direct quotes, but bestows the Master Ring if she completes every villager's mission. She meets him on her first trip to Wygall, which appears on the map after clearing the monastery. Upon arrival, she finds an elderly man sealed in yellowish crystals. She absorbs the glyph left by Albus, freeing him. Nikolai reveals a mysterious figure took the other 12 residents and then trapped him. Shanoa, knowing time is short, presses onward in her pursuit of Albus. Though Nikolai remains behind, he offers valuable guidance in her quest to restore peace to Wygall Village and prevent the return of Dracula's darkness. That's all we got for you this time, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.